One drop of red wine, on a white linen tablecloth. Nobody poured it. Nobody touched the glass, but there it sat, spreading slow into the weave like a wound just opening its mouth. The silver-haired man at the head of the table looked at the drop. Then he looked up at the waitress. His eyes were black as the bottom of a well. They did not blink. They did not move. They simply looked, the way a butcher looks at a piece of meat that has gone wrong on the hook. 30 men in dark suits stopped breathing at the same time, somewhere in the kitchen. A walk-in cooler clicked on. The hum carried all the way through the swinging doors. That was the size of the silence. She did not run. She could not. Her feet had turned to stone, 22 years old. Size 22. Cheap black flats. A body the world had spent a lifetime telling her to make smaller in every doorway. She should not have been on the floor tonight. She should not. A crystal glass slipped from someone's hand. It cracked against the hardwood, a small, bright sound. Like a tooth breaking, and 30 hands slid at the same time into the inside of 30 dark jackets. The restaurant went quiet, not the polite quiet that lives between courses in a fine dining room. The other kind. The kind that lands on a room the way a hand lands on the back of a neck. Sudden, cold, knowing. Carmela felt it before she understood it. She was standing at table 1. Silver platter balanced against her left hip. Antipasti arranged the way Julia had screamed at her to arrange it. Prosciutto fanned in a half-moon. Olives the color of bruises. A wedge of aged pecorino sweating soft beads under the chandelier, and 1 drop of Barolo on the white linen. 1 drop. Just 1. Spreading slow into the weave like ink into a napkin folded wrong. She had not poured the wine. She had not even touched the glass. The sommelier had done that 45 seconds ago. But the drop was there. Dark, round, stubborn. And the old man at the head of the table was looking at it. Then he looked at her. Don Calogero Bellandi, 71 years old, skin like a saddle left too long in the sun, silver hair combed flat against the scalp, a small white scar through his right eyebrow that looked older than she was. He did not blink. He did not speak. He looked at her the way a butcher looks at a piece of meat that has gone wrong on the hook. Carmela's stomach turned over once, soft, slow. She did not run. She could not. Her feet had decided to be made of stone. Now, to know why 30 men in dark suits stopped breathing in a fancy room on a Tuesday in October, you have to know the woman first. Because the woman is not what the room thought she was. Her name was Carmela Vella. She was 22 years old, a size 22, too, which she had stopped finding funny somewhere around her 16th birthday. She carried her weight in the hips. In the soft round of a belly no apron could flatten. In thighs that touched when she walked. She had been this shape since she was 15. She had cried about it for 2 of those years. She had made a hard, slow peace with it for the other 5. But there was a thing the world kept telling her. Doorways were narrow. Booths were narrow. Easels between velvet chairs were narrow. The world pinched her in 100 small ways every shift. The world said with its eyes every single day that she took up too much space. Some days she believed it, some days she did not. Tonight she had not been given the luxury of choosing, because tonight she should not have been on the floor at all. Julia, the manager, had tried to cut her from the schedule that afternoon. Severe woman. All angles and black coffee and a mouth that pursed like she was always tasting something sour. She ran on spite. It kept her thin. It's a private event tonight, Julia had said, eyes flicking up and down, landing on the way Carmela's black uniform pulled across the bust. VIPs. We need agility. We need girls who can move through the shadows, girls who can disappear, girls who are not you. She had not said that last part. She had not had to. Carmela had heard it anyway. She always heard it, and honestly. Honestly, Carmela would have loved the night off. Her feet had been screaming since Sunday. A Friday on the couch with her feet up was a small religion she had been building. So why had she stayed? She had stayed because of him. The man in the corner booth, the man with the charcoal suit, the man who had walked into her section 6 months ago on a wet April Tuesday to meet a contractor, the man who had forgotten the contractor's name, the man who came back every Tuesday and every Thursday after that, who sat where she put him, who looked at her the way nobody had ever looked at her, not past her, not around her, not through her like she was a piece of furniture in a room full of other people's lives at her. She had not known his last name until that morning. She knew it now, because he was sitting 6 chairs down from the old wolf. He was halfway out of his seat. His hand was already inside his charcoal jacket. He was the only person in the room who looked like he might do something dangerous in the next 4 seconds. Nunzio Bellandi, the old wolf's son, the new boss. The king of the city she had been waitressing in for 18 months. The man whose hand was reaching for a gun. To draw it on his own father. Stop. Wind it back. Because Carmela's brain was about to make a decision her brain had no business making. And to know why, you have to know about her grandmother, Nonna Assunta, dead 3 years now. Buried in a small cemetery in Berwyn under a marble angel some cousin paid too much for, but alive. Alive in Carmela the way garlic stays alive in a sauce after the pot is empty. The way a song stays alive in a room after the radio is off. Assunta had raised her after the car accident on the Eisenhower in 2009 took both her parents in the same wet October minute. It had been Assunta. The small garlic-scented apartment over the butcher shop on Taylor Street. The wooden spoon hanging by the stove, the glare that could stop a clock. The kitchen that smelled like every Sunday Carmela had ever lived. And the tongue, that tongue. Assunta refused English her whole life. Refused standard Italian too, mostly, except when ordering the priest around. What she spoke was a mountain dialect, from a narrow stretch of high Sicilian country outside Palermo. A tongue you only knew if it had been poured into you young, by someone who carried it in her bones. From a place the modern world had largely left alone, Assunta had poured it into Carmela, daily. From the time the girl could form vowels. We come from the rocks, Carmela. The rocks do not let the wolves bite. You hear me? We bite first, Carmela had heard. Carmela had not understood for what, until now, until standing at table 1 with a tray on her hip, and an old wolf calling her, in the dialect of her own grandmother, a sow, a pig as big as a house, asking the rum in that Sin tongue who had hired this cabor, this insult, this animal, this disgrace, telling the room to send her away, before he had her tongue cut out. A few of the older capos laughed louder. The younger men did not laugh. They did not understand the words, but they understood the temperature. Carmela's brain did a thing. It split. Down the middle, one half watched her own apron strings, watched a button straining on her uniform, watched the drop of Barolo, the dumb, sensible half, the bowed half, the half that wanted to put down the tray and walk out the back and cry into the dumpsters and call out of every shift she had left. The other half was Nonna Assunta. The other half stood up inside her chest and picked up the wooden spoon, so Carmela soft, heavy, standing on screaming feet in cheap black flats. 22 years old, a waitress, a nobody. Carmela opened her mouth, and out of her mouth came that dialect, not stumbling, not borrowed, flawless, the rolled s in the right places, the cut vowels at the end of every line, the casual, easy contempt of a woman who had been raised in high villages where the law had never reached. She told him this, that it was better to be a body made of meat and blood than a wolf, so dried up he was nothing but venom and mud, that if his eyes were too weak to bear the sight of her, he could close them. That an old dog who could not finish the meal in front of him should not insult the woman bringing the plates. Then she closed her mouth and waited for something, for a hand, for a shot, for the world. But the world did not move because somewhere in her chest, where the second half of her brain had picked up the wooden spoon, Nonna Assunta was still standing, refusing to bow, and Carmela, who had spent her entire life being told to make herself smaller in doorways, did not bow either. She did not bow. She did not blink. She held the tray, and she stared back into the black eyes of a wolf who had eaten cities. The room did not breathe. Somewhere in the kitchen behind her, a walk-in cooler clicked on. The hum carried all the way through the swinging doors. That was how quiet it got. That was how big the silence was. Saverio Greco, the underboss, wide, quiet man, grey at the temples, 46 years old, 2 daughters in high school, a wife who made the best fennel sausage on the north side. Saverio dropped his bourbon. The crystal cracked on the hardwood with a small sound like a tooth breaking. Nobody looked at it. Every hand in the room moved. Not far, just an inch, just toward the inside of a jacket, Nunzio, halfway out of his chair, his face. God, his face, the murder she had seen there 1 second ago, was gone, replaced by something hotter, something older, something so much worse. He was staring at her like she had walked out of a story he had been told as a child. And the story had just turned out to be true, and the Storethwood walked up to his father's table, and the story was speaking. Don Calogero did not blink. The color drained out of his face slow, from the cheekbones down, until he was the color of wet ash, and then he spoke, quieter, now almost gentle, in the same mountain dialect. "Who are you?" Carmela's heart was kicking inside her ribs hard enough to bruise. She crossed her arms over her chest, realized too late that crossing her arms only drew the eye to the curve of her bust, did not uncross them. "Would not. Would my name," in plain ugly tourist Italian, to insult him with the change. "Is Carmela?" He brushed past the tourist Italian like it had not been spoken, leaned forward an inch, 2, back into the rocks. Lower. A blade slid out of a wooden sheath. "Whose daughter are you? Whose blood? Who taught you to speak the language of the rocks?" She wet her lips, tasted the night. "My grandmother," she said, quiet, in the tongue. Assunta Vella, of San Ciparello. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Vella Don Calogero Bellandi, the untouchable ghost of Palermo, the wolf the FBI had been chasing for 30 years. The man who could silence his son with 1 finger, flinched a tiny jerk, a hitch of the heavy shoulders. On any other man it would have been nothing. On him it was a scream. Saverio crossed himself. Fast, 3 fingers, muttering something old under his breath. An old protection, an old name, and Nunzio. Nunzio stood all the way up, all 6 feet 2 inches of him. He moved, around the corner of the table, toward her. He did not run, he walked. The slow, steady walk of a man who has decided something and is no longer asking permission to act on it. And his hand, his large, warm hand, found the small of her back, and then the soft curve above her hip, and wrapped, and pulled her gently, firmly. Behind him, Carmela's breath caught, not because of the danger, because of the hand that 6 months of Tuesdays and Thursdays had only ever brushed hers when she set down his espresso. That hand. On her waist, in front of his father, in front of 30 armed men, she wanted very stupidly to cry. She did not. "That is enough, Papa," Nunzio said in English. Not the dialect. The dialect was the old country. The English was now. The English was Chicago. The English was the new boss talking to the old one. Don Calogero leaned to the side, peered around his son's chest, looked at Carmela. The disgust in his eyes was gone. In its place was something so much worse. It was fear. Assunta Vella, he whispered. The Black Widow. She did not die in the fires of 85. He turned his great grey head, looked up at his son, and smiled. It was the worst smile Carmela had ever seen on a face. The smile of a man watching a trap he had not set spring shut on his own foot. "You fool," he said, soft, back in the dialect. "You think you brought a waitress to my table." Nunzio's hand tightened on her hip. "You brought the granddaughter of the only family the Bellandis ever feared. into my house, and you let her pour my wine. I know exactly who she is." Nunzio said, a lie, a flawless, beautiful, magnificent lie. Carmela could hear it for what it was. She had served him espresso for 6 months. She knew the small tremor in his voice when he was bluffing. He turned his head just enough to catch her eye over his shoulder, and the look in his dark eyes was a promise, dangerous, burning, absolute. "And she," he said, "is not going anywhere." The room split down the middle. Like cheap fabric, every man in the dining room drew, all the way out. Not aimed yet, just out. Steel catching the amber light. 15 older capos and soldiers on one side. The men who had chuckled at the Don's insult. The ones loyal to the old country and the old man and the old way. 15 on the other side. The younger ones. The sharp suits. The ones who had bled the Volpe family 2 summers ago to put Nunzio on the throne. Half the room was pointing at Nunzio. Half the room was pointing at Don Calogero, and in the middle, behind Nunzio, stood Carmela, a waitress, a girl, soft, heavy, shaking, not running. Saverio was on his feet, gun out, pointed at Don Calogero. Carmela noted that the grey underboss had chosen a side, noted which side, filed it away in the part of her brain that had been quietly filing things for 22 years. She felt Nunzio's back against her. Warm through the suit, he was very still. The kind of still men get when their bodies are deciding whether to fight or talk. He chose talk. "We are walking out, Papa," he said. "A beat, Carmetla. We are walking. Stay behind me. Do not stop. Do not turn." "Yes," she said. Her voice came out steady. She did not know how. Don Calogero did not move. He simply watched. He could have given the word. He could have lifted one thick finger and made everything in that room go red and final. He did not. He sat there with his great hands flat on the linen and his black eyes locked on the girl behind his son. And he did the strangest thing. He let them go, step by step, backward through the dining room, past tables of frozen men, past Julia at the host stand, her face the color of milk, past the swinging kitchen doors. Carmela's hand found a fistful of Nunzio's jacket. She did not remember telling it to. It just did. In the kitchen, the line cooks had stopped chopping. A young dishwasher held a plate in midair like a man in a photograph. Steam from a pot of water rose lonely toward the vent. Julia came running in behind them, her thin face all pinched and white. "Mr. Bellandis," she gasped. "Please. I did not know who she was. I would not have let her near your table. I will fire her tonight. Right now. I will fire this second." Nunzio did not look at her. "She does not work here anymore," he said. Carmela's heart cracked. Just a little. Just a hairline, 18 months of aching feet and split tips, and Julia's small daily cruelties, ended in one sentence. In passing, while she was being walked out of her own life. Her last check. Nunzio said, "Goes to my office. Yes, Mr. Bellandis." Julia whispered. The back door banged open. Cold autumn air, wet asphalt, grease from the dumpster. Somewhere up the block a man laughing too loud at a bar. The world doing its ordinary night, not knowing it had just been broken open by a single drop of wine. A black SUV idling in the alley. Marcello at the wheel. Marcello, who was 25 and looked 16 and had eyes that did not match his face. Nunzio practically lifted her into the back seat. He was not a small man. She was not a small woman. He moved her like she weighed nothing. She did not have time to be embarrassed. The door slammed. Saverio dropped into the front passenger seat. 2 more men climbed in the back. Flanking her, Nunzio went to the other side and slid in beside her. The SUV peeled out of the alley. Carmela looked at Nunzio. Nunzio looked at Carmela. Neither of them said anything for 1 full Chicago block. "Then so," he said. "Carefully so." She said, "You speak Sicilian, a version of it." "Yes, yes. And your grandmother was Assunta Vella of San Ciparello." "Yes." Okay, a long beat." "Carmela," he said. She did not look at him. "Did you know," she said, "when you sat in my section? Did you know who I was?" A long pause. "No, you're lying." "I am not lying." You sat in my booth every Tuesday and every Thursday for 6 months. Nunzio, you knew. You had to know. I did not know. Then, why did you come back? He turned his face toward her. The streetlights ran across his jaw in passing yellow stripes, and then dark, and then yellow again. His eyes were so dark they ate the light because, he said, the first time I walked into that restaurant I had a meeting with a contractor. You brought my water, and I forgot the contractor's name, and 6 months later, I am still forgetting it. She looked at her hands. Her hands were trembling. She made them stop. Okay, she said. Okay. A beat, where are we going? She said to a safe place. That is not an answer. I do not have a better answer yet. Carmela Saverio, up front, cleared his throat, boss. What? His phone. We should look at his phone. Lose yours a pause. Why mine? Saverio did not answer right away, and Carmela, in the back seat, watched Saverio's eyes flick to the rearview mirror and then away, watched his thumb move once across the screen of his own phone, filed it. She did not say anything, not yet. She made herself small in her seat, which was a hard thing for a body her size to do, and she watched, the way she had watched her whole life. Because here is the thing about being a woman shaped like Carmela. People did not pay attention to her. They talked above her. They made faces over her head. They took a half-second longer to lie because they were not afraid of her catching it. Carmela had spent her whole life being the person nobody watched, which meant Carmela had spent her whole life watching everybody. The SUV slid down a concrete ramp under a glass tower she did not recognize. The world went fluorescent. A private garage, empty except for one black sedan. Saverio got out first, walked the perimeter, came back, nodded. Nunzio got out, came around, opened her door himself, held out his hand. She took it. His hand was warm, steady. A workman's hand for a man who wore suits. There was a small sosker across one knuckle. She wondered when, she wondered how, she wondered if she would ever know. She thought of Nonna Assunta, of a wooden spoon, of a wedding photograph on the dresser of the apartment on Taylor Street. A young man with a smile like a piece of bread. The fisherman, dead at 23 in the Sicilian Sea. The man Assunta had loved before any boy named Calogero had ever climbed her mountain stop. Focus. She let Nunzio help her out. He did not let go of her hand. Upstairs, he said. The elevator went up 40-something floors. Her ears popped. She could see her own reflection in the brass doors. A heavy, round face. A black uniform with the buttons pulled tight across the bust. A flushed neck. Hair coming out of its tie. Mascara smudged under both eyes. She looked like a woman who had walked through a fire. The doors opened. On a penthouse that was all glass on 3 sides. The Chicago skyline burning gold through the windows. Lake Michigan, a dark plate of nothing behind it. The kind of place you did not own. The kind of place was owning you. A woman was waiting in the front room. Late 60s, small, wrapped in a black shawl. Iron grey hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. 2 very bright eyes set in a face that was a map of lines. The woman looked at Carmela, and she stopped breathing, just stopped, for 1 long second. Then she crossed herself. Slow, Madre Santa, she whispered. She is her face. Who are you? Carmela said. It came out harder than she meant. She did not soften it. The woman did not flinch. My name is Donatella Greco, she said, in careful accented English. I knew your grandmother a long time ago. Before what? The bright eyes went sad. Then sharp. Then, in one heartbeat, the woman switched languages. Not standard Italian, the mountain dialect. The rocks, before the fires, little one. Before we all became ghosts, Carmela's knees did a thing. Nunzio caught her elbow. Sit, he said. He guided her to a low leather sofa so soft she sank into it like a bath. Donatella sat across from her. Nunzio stayed standing. The way a man stands who is used to standing while other people talk. How many of you? Carmela whispered. In the tongue, Donatella smiled. It was not a young smile, more than you think. How many? After 85, the old woman said. After the warehouses, after the fires, after the Bellandi men came through our villages with torches and lists, there were perhaps 12 of us who got out. 12, from a narrow stretch of country in the high hills, mostly women, a handful of boys too young to fight. We were smuggled out on different boats, different ports. We did not write each other letters. We did not speak our own tongue in public. We disappeared into America the way salt disappears into soup. And then. We waited for what? For a child of the blood to grow up and, Donatella looked at her hands, and come back and do something a Vella does. Carmela's mouth had gone dry. I have not done anything. You spoke the rocks at a Bellandi table tonight, child. That is a Vella thing. Yes. She looked at Nunzio about these people. No, he said you are lying. I am not. Carmela, I swear to you. Saverio called her from the car, from the alley behind the restaurant. 20 minutes ago. She is, apparently, his aunt. I did not know any of these people existed 2 hours ago. Carmela looked at Saverio, who was standing in the foyer, studying his shoes. Saverio. She said, Donna. He said, don't call me that. He looked up. She is the granddaughter of Assunta Vella, he said, in English, to Nunzio. Not to her. There is no other word. She is a waitress. Carmela said, she was a waitress. Donatella said, soft. 3 hours ago. Now she is the last of the Vellas. Now she is the Donna. I am not, yes. I do not even know what that you will learn. I do not want to, that, Donatella said, is exactly what every good Donna in our history has said when the title found her. And right then, Carmela's phone buzzed in her apron pocket. The cheap black apron she was still wearing. She had forgotten she had it on. She had forgotten she was still in her uniform. She had forgotten she had a phone. It buzzed again. She pulled it out, unhunyul number. The message was 3 words. Get out now. She turned the phone to Nunzio. His face changed. The man went away. The boss came up through the skin, Saverio. He said Saverio was already on his own phone. Garage, he said. 2 SUVs, black plates. South, ramp, numbers, maybe 8. Who's a pause, a half-second pause. His men. Saverio said, and Carmela. In the middle of the worst night of her life. Caught that half-second. Filed it, said nothing yet. Nunzio was moving. The penthouse came alive in the way only certain rooms do. Doors opened that Carmela had not seen as doors. 2 men appeared from somewhere off the kitchen. A panel slid in the hallway. The skyline behind the glass kept burning calm and gold, while inside the apartment everything became wire divisive stairs. Nunzio said, how many floors? Donatella said, 43. I am 68 years old. Nunzio, you are 68 years old, and you are going to walk down 43 floors, or I am going to carry you. I will walk. She walked. Carmela was already moving too. Her thighs were going to scream. She knew it. She did not care. They did the first 10 flights in a knot. Nunzio in front, Carmela behind him, Donatella behind her, surprisingly quick, Saverio behind Donatella. 2 silent men bringing up the rear with their hands inside their jackets. Around the 15th floor, Donatella spoke up softly, in the dialect. Without slowing down. Your grandmother walked the mountains for 2 days, with a bullet in her leg. In 1979, you have her legs. Carmela almost laughed. She did not. She kept walking. She walked the way Assunta had walked, the way large women walk when the world has told them they cannot, with the chin up, with the breath even, with the small certainty that the next step would hold. Sublevel 3 was concrete, pipes, a yellow line painted on the floor. Nunzio led them along the yellow line to a steel door, punched a code. A tunnel opened, cold, damp, smelling of old stone. How long has this been here? Carmela said, 11 years. Nunzio said, you built a tunnel. I bought a building with a tunnel. Why? Because, he said. Sometimes a man needs to leave a building without using the door. They walked 5 minutes, maybe 7, Another door, another code, another parking structure, a different SUV waiting, a different driver this time, younger than Marcello. If that was even possible, boss. The kid said, drive. Nunzio said, the lake house, yes, boss. They piled in, Nunzio in the front passenger seat, Carmela and Donatella in the middle row, Saverio and the two silent men in the back. Doors slammed, tires squealed. The SUV pulled out into the night, and Carmela's phone buzzed, same unknown number. The lake house, her blood went cold. She read it twice, 3 times, because nobody had said the words lake house, except Nunzio. 30 seconds ago, inside a car, with 6 people. She looked up, she looked at the back of Nunzio's head, at Donatella's lined face, at Saverio in the rearview mirror. Saverio was looking at his own phone. His thumb was moving. She watched it move. And here is where Carmela did something Assunta would have been proud of. She did not gasp. She did not point. She did not say a word. She put her own phone screen down on her lap. She leaned forward, casual, tired. Like a girl stretching a sore back, she put her hand on Nunzio's shoulder, light, affectionate. She squeezed, twice, then once, then twice again. She had no idea if he would understand. She had no idea if she was about to die for being wrong. Nunzio's hand came up, patted hers, twice, then once, then twice, acknowledged, then he said, casually. To the driver, chant of plans. The cabin in Wisconsin instead, yes, boss. The kid said in the back. Saverio's thumb stopped moving for 1 full second. Then it started again, and Carmela knew. She knew with the same certainty her tongue had known the dialect. She knew it in the rocks of her chest. She knew it. There was a rat in this car. And it was the man who had crossed himself when she said her grandmother's name. Now stop. Slow down. Think, because Carmela's brain was finally running, after years of being told to be small, to be quiet, to be sensible, to be the polite girl at the back of the room. The brain was up, and it was loud, and it was saying, who benefits if I die tonight? Don Calogero. Obvious, the granddaughter of his old enemy. Eliminated, bloodline closed, but. Don Calogero had insulted her at the table, loud, in front of his men, in the dialect. He had not hidden it. He had not been sly. Calogero Bellandi was a man of the old way. The old way did not text people the location of a son's lake house. The old way would have stood up at the table. Said in front of witnesses. Kill them. He had not done that. He had let them walk out. Why? Why had he let them walk? Carmela closed her eyes, just for a second, and she heard Nonna Assunta's voice, not from any one memory, from all of them at once. From a kitchen on Taylor Street, smelling of garlic and crushed tomato. From a small old woman bent over a stove, wooden spoon in one hand, the other hand resting on the small of her own back, the way large women rest. The wolf you see is not the wolf that eats you. She opened her eyes. She looked at Saverio in the rear-view mirror. Saverio was looking back. He smiled. Small, sad. The smile of a man who is sorry about something he has already decided to do. Pull over. Carmela said, soft. What? Nunzio said, pull the car over. Right now. Carmela, pull over. The kid in the driver's seat looked at Nunzio. Nunzio looked at her. Carmela's face was set in concrete, Nunzio said. Pull over. The SUV slid onto the shoulder of Lakeshore Drive. Water on one side, dark and endless. The city climbing on the other, in white towers full of sleeping people. A jogger went past on the path. Did not look, did not see them. The world doing its small, ordinary things, while in this car, the past 40 years was about to put its head up out of the ground. Carmela turned in her seat. She looked at Saverio. Show me your phone. She said in the dialect. Saverio's face did a very small thing, a thing only a person who has been watched her whole life could catch. Donna, he said, in English, I think you are tired. I think, Saverio, she said his name very gently, show me your phone. The two silent men in the back were not silent anymore. They were not moving exactly. But they had become very still in the way armed men go still when they are deciding which way to point a thing. Donatella beside her put her small lined hand on Carmela's wrist. A pulse, a heartbeat. Carmela could not tell if it was warning or approval. Saverio looked at Nunzio. Nunzio said, "Show her the phone." "Saverio, boss." "Saverio. The Donna asked you a question." The word landed. Donna, from Nunzio, to his own underboss, about a girl who 4 hours ago had been carrying his prosciutto. It dropped into that car like a stone into a well. Saverio's hand moved. Slow, he held the phone up, screen face down against his palm. "Turn it," Carmela said. He turned it, and there, glowing on the screen, the last message, not in English, in the dialect, "Theino," ending it my way. And the contact above it was one word, a name Carmela did not know. Ruggero Donatella made a sound, a small sound, like a piece of something inside her breaking. She said one word, "Impossibile, impossible." Saverio closed his eyes for just a second, like a man who had been waiting a long time to be caught, and was almost relieved to finally be standing in the light. "I am sorry, Donna," he said, in the dialect. "I truly am, but there are older debts than blood." His hand went to his jacket. Nunzio shot him first. Not killed, shot, in the shoulder. A clean, fast crack inside the car, so loud Carmela's left ear went to a high white whine. The world moved like it was underwater for 3 seconds. Saverio jerked sideways. The phone fell to the floor mat. One of the silent men in the back had his gun out, not pointed at Nunzio, pointed at Saverio. Loyal, Carmela thought. Distant. That one is loyal. She was breathing very fast. She made herself stop. "Marcelio," said the kid up front, hands shaking on the wheel. "Yes, boss." "Drive," Nunzio said, "slow around the block, until I tell you yes, boss." Donatella was staring at the phone on the floor, at a name there that should not have been there. "Ruggero," she whispered. "Who?" Nunzio said. Donatella's bright eyes had gone tired in a way Carmela had not seen before. He was Calogero's best friend. When they were boys. In the mountains. Before any of this. They came over together. They built the family together. She looked at Nunzio. He has been dead since 1983. The car was silent. Who killed him? Carmela said. She knew the answer. She just wanted to hear someone say it. Donatella's mouth moved. Calogero did. Why? Because Donatella's voice was almost gentle. Because Ruggero loved Assunta, before Calogero did. And Assunta did not want either of them. Carmela's breath stopped, just stopped, for what felt like an entire slow minute, because the war was not a war. The war was a love triangle. 43 years old, 3 children of the rocks, 2 boys and a girl, and one of the boys killed the other. And then he tried to wipe out the girl's whole bloodline because she would not have him. And then he told everyone for 40 years that it had been about territory and money and anything but the truth. And now the boy he had killed was sending text messages from somebody's phone. In the front seat, Nunzio Bellandi closed his eyes, just for 1 second. Like a man absorbing a punch he had been expecting his whole life and had still hoped, somewhere small, would never come. When he opened them, he was looking at Carmela. "My father," he said. "Quiet. Did not start this." "No," Carmela said. "He did. He just did not finish it." She looked at her hands. They had stopped shaking. They were very, very still. "My grandmother," she said, "never told me any of this, no." Donatella said softly. "She would not. There are stories the rocks do not share, even with their own." Marcello up front. "Trying to be invisible, boss," he said. Small voice. "Where are we going?" Nunzio looked out the windshield at the lake, at the city, at the long dark road ahead of them. "To my father," he said. Carmela's head snapped up. "What?" "To my father. He hates me. He is afraid of you." Nunzio said. "That is not the same thing." He reached his hand back between the seats. "Open. Palm up." She looked at it, and in 1 second. 1. Carmela saw the whole rest of her life branching branch 1. She did not take the hand. She got out of the car. She walked back to her small apartment in Pilsen. She locked the door. She turned off her phone. She moved cities by sunrise. She lived, probably. For a wild branch, too, she took the hand, and the night became a road she could not see the end of. She thought about Nonna Assunta. A hospital room 3 years ago, tubes and the smell of disinfectant. A small old woman in a bed shrunken down to the size of a child, a papery hand reaching up to find Carmela's face. Bore me, Carmelina. Promise me, my heart. Never trust a man named Bellandi. Bedors. I promise, Nonna. She closed her eyes. She thought about a hand brushing hers when she set down an espresso. A man who had sat in her booth for 6 months and never once said a single word about her body. A man whose eyes had never once asked her to be smaller. She thought about how strange it was that the rocks remembered. She put her hand in his drive. She said, that was the word, one word. And the SUV slid back onto Lakeshore Drive with a bleeding man in the back seat and a 40-year-old ghost glowing on a fallen phone. Nobody talked for the first mile. There is a quiet that lives inside a car after you have finally seen the shape of the thing that has been hunting you. It is not relieved. It is not sad. It is the quiet of a person rearranging every memory she has. Pulling each one off the shelf, holding it up to a new light, putting it back differently. Because the old way it sat was a lie. Carmela was doing that, mile after mile, Nonna Assunta humming in the kitchen, hands deep in flour. A song with no words. Was that humming? Or was that remembering? Was Assunta hearing footsteps in those small moments? A boy named Ruggero coming up the mountain road 40 years too late. A boy named Calogero who had not yet decided to become a wolf. Stop Cocos, Saverio in the back, groaning soft. The other silent man binding his shoulder with a strip of undershirt. He will live, the man said. To nobody good. Nunzio said, without turning around. I have questions. 2 phone calls, both fast, both in clipped Italian. Carmela caught maybe half. Something about clearing the Inn of Shadows. Something about old men and a private room. Something about doors. Both doors. Front and back, he hung up, he turned in his seat. He will see us, just like that. Carmela said he will see you. Why? Because he is afraid. And the only thing in this world that gets a closed door open with my father is fear. She looked out the window, 11:38 at night. Chicago doing its small, ordinary things. A couple kissing under a streetlight. A drunk man walking with his shoes in his hands. A woman waiting alone at a bus stop with a small white dog in her lap. The world keeping its rhythm. While she rode toward the man who had ordered her killed 4 hours ago, Donatella sat beside her, very still, the way old women go still when they pray without moving their mouths. He killed my Ruggero, Donatella said. Quiet. In the dialect, Carmela looked at her. He was your Ruggero too? Donatella nodded, just barely, my brother. She said, Carmela stopped breathing for a count of 3, your brother older by 4 years. He went down the mountain one night in 1983. To meet a friend, he did not come back. Calogero told the village it was the police. We knew it was not the police, but we did not know. Not for certain. Not until tonight. She looked at the phone on the floor. The screen had gone dark. The name was still glowing in everyone's head, so either. Donatella said, my brother is alive, and he has been waiting 43 years for this. Or someone is using a dead man's name to play a game older than any of us understand. Either way, she looked at Carmela. You are the piece on the board they are moving for. The SUV slowed. The Inn of Shadows came up on the right. The valet stand was empty. The curtains were still drawn. The lights in the front window had been dimmed to almost nothing. Carmela's stomach turned over. It is a trap, she had said, probably. Nunzio said, and we are walking into it. Yes. Why? Nunzio turned. The streetlights made shadows move across his face because, he said. The only way out of a trap, Carmela, is to spring it on purpose. While you are the one still holding the wire, that was the moment. That was the moment she understood why this man had ended up in her section every Tuesday for 6 months. Because something in her had recognized something in him before her mind ever got around to noticing it. Something rocky, something that did not bend, something that knew in its bones how to walk into rooms it had no business walking into. She nodded. She got out of the car. The Inn of Shadows. She had walked through these doors at 6 p.m. carrying a tray of antipasti. She walked through them again at 11:52, carrying nothing but her own name. The dining room had been cleared. 30 men gone. Candles out. Most of the lights too. The only light came from one chandelier, still glowing low and amber over the head table, and at that head table alone sat Don Calogero Bellandi. He was not eating. He was not drinking. He had his big hands flat on the wood. He was simply sitting, the way a man sits at the funeral of someone he did not know how to grieve. He did not stand when they walked in. He did not have to. Nunzio stopped 3 feet from the table. Carmela stepped past him. She walked all the way up. She pulled out the chair across from Don Calogero, the chair where Severio had sat earlier. She sat. She put her own hands flat on the wood, across from his, soft against leathered, young against old, new against ancient. She looked at him. "Ruggiero is alive," she said. In the dialect, the old wolf did not blink, did not move, did not breathe for a long moment. Then I know 2 words that made the entire night before this moment fall sideways. Carmela's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You know, I have known," he said. Soft. For 3 months, Nunzio took a step closer. "Papa, sit, my son," the old man said. "Sit. There are things I should have told you years ago. There is no version of this night where I do not say them now." Nunzio sat. Slowly, Donatella stepped into the room. Calogero saw her, and the old wolf, for the first time, looked down. The way a man looks down in a hallway he had hoped never to walk again. "Donatella," he said. "Calogero, I did not know you came over. You did not look." He nodded. "Slow, no," he said. "I did not." Then he raised his black eyes across the table to Carmela, and for the first time, for the very first time, she saw what was actually inside him. Not hatred, not even fear, shame. A shame so old and so deep it had calcified inside him like stone. A shame he had wrapped in rage for 40 years, because rage was easier to carry. Because rage felt like power. Because shame would have broken him, "Your grandmother," he said. To Carmela, he stopped. He started again. "Your grandmother was the most beautiful thing that ever walked out of those mountains. Not because of her face. Because of her." He gestured vaguely at his own chest steel. He said, "She had steel. I know what she had." Carmela said quietly. "Yes," he said. "You do. You sit like her. You speak like her. You looked at me tonight the way she looked at me the night she said no." His big leathered hands closed slowly into fists on the table, then opened. "Ruggiero loved her first," he said. "I loved her second. She loved neither of us. She loved a fisherman from the next village over. The sea took him in 78. We thought, both of us, that the door was open. We were boys. We were stupid. We did not understand that a door can be closed, even when no one is standing in it." A pause. "I went up to her house in 82. I told her I would build her a kingdom. She told me she would build her own. I told her I would burn the world if she would not have me. She told me to go home." Carmela's hands on the table had begun to tremble. She made them stop. "And so," she said, "you tried to burn it. I did burn it, 3 warehouses, and other things. Things history does not name. Things I would name now if there was any honor left in the naming. You killed Ruggiero, yes, because he had loved her first." "No," Calogero said. His voice cracked. A small crack, the kind a stone makes the second before it splits. "I killed Ruggiero," he said, "because after she said no to me, he came to me. He said, 'Calogero, look what you have done. Leave her be. Leave the villages be. You are not a man. You are a wound walking.' And I killed him for saying it, because it was true. And I could not bear it being true." Silence long. Donatella crossed herself again. Tears were running down the lined map of her face. She did not wipe them. Carmela's hand found Donatella's under the table. Squeezed, old fingers like dry twigs, squeezed back. "I am sorry, Donatella." Calogero said that word. Donatella said, "Does not bring my brother home, no," he said. "It does not." Nunzio leaned forward. "Papa, you said you have known." "For 3 months that Ruggiero was alive, yes, how?" Calogero exhaled. It was a long, long breath, because 3 months ago, a letter arrived at my villa in Palermo. It said only, "I am still in the rocks, and I am coming for what is owed." The handwriting was his, and you told no one. Whom would I have told? I had killed him 40 years before. With my own hands, I had stood over his body. I had buried him with my own shovel. The letter could only mean one of 2 things. Either I had not killed him as well as I thought, or someone was using his name. Both possibilities required a kind of attention. The quiet kind, not the kind one announces. He turned slowly to Carmela, and then I came to America, to inspect my son's house, to look for weakness, and the first night, the very first night. A waitress brushes my chair, and she opens her mouth, and out comes the rocks. Out comes Assunta's voice, from a body shaped like Assunta's body. After 40 years of silence, he almost smiled. "I am an old man," he said, "but I am not so old I cannot recognize a trap when I see one. Somebody wanted me here, tonight, with this girl, so that I would see her, and react, and start a war with my own son." He looked at Nunzio. "I let you walk her out of here, my son, because I needed to see who would try to kill her on the way home." Nunzio went very still. "You used her as bait." "I used the whole night as bait." "Papa, I am asking your forgiveness, Nunzio, in front of her, in front of Donatella, because I think there is one chance left for this family." He turned back to Carmela and the old wolf, in a gesture nobody in that room had ever seen him make to any living person. Lowered his great grey head just a little, "Just enough. Forgive me, child," he said, "or do not. But hear me first. Severio is not the only one. There is a man inside my own house, in Palermo, who've been for years. Slow, patient, using the Vessa sleepers as a knife, using my old guilt as a glove. He wanted my son's men to point their guns at my men tonight. He wanted us to finish ourselves, so that he could walk through the smoke and pick up the city." "Who?" Carmela said. Calogero met her eyes. "His name is Cosimo. He runs a printing business in the Loop. He has been close to me for 10 years. A nephew of the family, I called him. He has eaten at my table. He has sat at my elbow. Why? Because Cosimo is Ruggiero's son." The room dropped, just dropped. Like a floor falling out of a building, Ruggiero had a son. Donatella whispered, "Yes, in 1983. He had been married 3 months when he died, yes. I did not know until the boy was a man, until he came to me. With his mother's eyes, and he said he was looking for work, and I gave it to him. Because I thought." Calogero stopped, shook his head. "Because I thought God was offering me a way to wash my hands, by raising the son of the man I murdered. I thought the years had softened him, or me, or both, and he was using you." Nunzio said. "He was raising himself, inside my house, like a snake under a stove. He sent the letter himself. In handwriting he had practiced for years, from a book of his father's old letters his mother kept. He wanted me to think his father was alive, to make me afraid, to make me come to America, to make me confront a granddaughter I did not know existed, because if I killed her, if I started the war again, he would step in as the calm voice, as the reasonable one, as the new master of both old rocks." "You old fool," Donatella whispered. "Yes," Calogero said. "I am." Carmela's brain was running. "Wait," she said. Everybody looked at her. "Severio is in the SUV outside. Shot in the shoulder, bleeding into the leather. His phone is on the floor mat. Whoever Cosimo is, he does not know yet that his man got caught. Does he?" A small smile began on Calogero's mouth, a small, slow, dangerous smile, the smile of an old wolf seeing the moonlight for the first time in years. "No," he said. "He does not then." Carmela leaned forward. "Then let us write him back." The room held still. Nunzio, slowly, looked at his father, the way a son looks at a father when he is about to either kill him or save him, and has not yet decided which. Calogero met his eyes, and the old wolf nodded once. Carmela got up. Her thighs were still burning from 43 flights of stairs, sirs. She did not care. She walked to the front window. She looked out at the dark Chicago street. She looked at her own reflection in the glass, a heavy round face, a black uniform with the buttons pulled tight, a flushed neck, hair coming out of its tie. She did not see a waitress. She saw her grandmother. She saw the rocks. She turned round. "Bring me the phone," she said. Donatella stood up, crossed the room, touched Carmela's cheek with one papery hand. "Donna," she whispered. Carmela closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them. She looked at the three of them: Calogero, Nunzio, Donatella. A wolf, a king, an old widow. "We are going to bring him here," she said, "tonight, before sunrise, while he still thinks he has won how." Calogero said. Carmela almost smiled. "The same way you brought me here," she said, bait. They wrote it in the empty dining room: Calogero, Nunzio, Donatella, Carmela. And in the corner, propped in a chair with his shoulder bound, Saverio, who, when the door had closed and the choices had become simple, told them everything. Cosimo had found him at 16. A scholarship boy, Sicilian last name, no father. A mother in a hospital in Detroit, slowly dying of something with a long Latin name. Cosimo had paid the hospital bills. Cosimo had paid the tuition. Cosimo had told the boy, "When you are old enough, there is a family that did this to you, and one day you and I are going to make them pay." He had not told Saverio about Donatella. He had told Saverio that Donatella was dead in the fires. He had told Saverio that the Bellandis had thrown the match. Saverio had believed it for 30 years. He cried while he told them, a grown man with grey at the temples, crying soft, crying quiet, the way men cry when they have spent their whole lives building a life on top of a lie that has just fallen out from under them. "I am a fool," he said. In the dialect, "You are a fool." Donatella agreed, in the same. "But you are not a wicked fool. There is a difference. The first can be forgiven. The second cannot." Then she added, almost gently, "My sister was your mother. I held you, the morning you were born, in a small house in the hills, before the fires, before any of this. I held you, and you slept in my arms for an hour, and I told you, in a language you did not yet know, that you would be a good man. Be a good man, Saverio," she said. Now, starting now, Saverio looked up at her. His face did a thing it had not done in a very long time. His face became young. The text went out at 12:57 in the morning, from Saverio's phone, to the contact named Ruggero. It said, "It is done. Both dead. The old man and the girl. The son surrendered. The garage. Sublevel 3. 1 hour. There was a long pause. Then, the typing dots appeared. Then on my way." Calogero read the screen. He did not smile. He nodded. "You," he said, to Carmela, "are not a waitress. I have been a waitress," she said. "That is not what I said." He turned to Nunzio. "My son, yes, Papa. You will marry this woman." "A beat. You do not have to," Carmela said. "Quick, I am asking," Calogero said. "Not telling. The old way was telling. I am trying to not be the old way. For 1 hour. Of my life, I will." Nunzio said he had not looked at her. He had not had to. Carmela's face went hot in a way that had nothing to do with the night. "We will talk about that later," she said. "Yes, Donna." He said, "Don't." "Yes, stop." "Yes, Donna." She turned around so they could not see her face. She heard, behind her, Donatella laugh, a soft, cracked laugh. The first laugh that old woman had laughed in a long time. And Carmela could hear that too, could hear the years of silence inside it breaking open. Like dry earth in a rain, there was something else she could hear, her own heart beating very fast. For a reason that was not fear, for a reason that was the man behind her who had just promised to marry her in front of his father. She put her hand flat against the cool window glass to steady herself. The window was cold. The night outside was cold. She was very, very warm. Cosimo brought 30 men. He drove them himself. He came down the ramp of the parking garage under Nunzio's tower at 2:05 in the morning. A slow procession of 3 black SUVs, headlights cutting through the concrete dust. He stepped out of the lead car like a man about to claim what he had been owed for 43 years. He was 42, tall, thin, silver glasses he had worn since college. A face you would not look at twice on the street. The kind of face that ran a printing business in the Loop. The kind of face you sat next to on the Blue Line and forgot. He had on a charcoal coat. He carried no visible weapon. He did not need one. His men were the weapon, and his patience was the weapon. He had outweighted his enemies for 16 years. He walked toward the center of the garage where, under one flickering fluorescent light, a single figure stood, a woman soft, wide, standing very still, Carmela, in the same black uniform she had been wearing since 6 p.m. the night before. She had refused to change. Let him see what he hated. She had said to Donatella in the dining room, let him see what was supposed to be invisible. Cosimo stopped 20 feet away. He looked at her. He smiled so, he said. The puppet is still standing. Cosimo, she said. You learned my name. Your father's brother told me. He said you were not a snake. He said you were a man who had a mother who died alone in a hospital in Detroit. While the wolf got rich. His smile slipped. Just a little. My father, he said, was murdered by the man who raised me. You and I are not so different, Carmela. We both grew up on the lie of an old wolf. We are not the same, we are not. The difference is, I knew it, and you did not. Until I made you know it, you brought the old man to America. I did. You put me on the schedule tonight. I made a small contribution to your manager's gambling debt. She kept you on the floor for a private event. I knew you would be there. You wanted him to kill me. I wanted him to start. I would have finished and then take both families, and then take all of it. Carmela nodded slowly. You forgot something. He tilted his head. Polite, amused. Did I? You forgot, she said. That the rocks remember a beat, he laughed. A small laugh. Soft the rocks, he said, are very far away. Carmela, no, she said. She raised her hand. Just slightly. They are right here. That was the signal. That was the moment the shadows of the garage came alive, from behind every concrete pillar, from the stairwells, from the parked cars, from the dark spaces between things. They came out, not just Nunzio's young men, from the other side too, from behind Cosimo. From his own men, the sleepers stepped forward, all of them, pulling their weapons, not pointing at Carmela, not pointing at any Bellandi, pointing at Cosimo and then behind them a second movement, smaller, slower, but somehow louder than all the rest, Don Calogero's old guard. The men who had ridden with him from the old country, the men who had laughed at his cruelty in the dining room, the ones loyal to him bone deep. They were stepping out too, their guns trained on Cosimo. He turned in a slow circle. He saw the geometry of it. He saw that he had been outflanked by a girl in a stained apron and an old wolf who had finally remembered how to be a man. Papa, he whispered, to no one, this is not justice. He said the fluorescent light caught on his silver glasses. This is bookkeeping. It is both. A voice said. Don Calogero stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, slow, heavy, 71 years old. Walking like the weight of every wrong thing he had ever done was hanging from his shoulders, which, perhaps, it was. I made you, Cosimo, he said, and I unmake you now. For your father, to whom I owed 40 years of breathing, and for this girl, to whom I owed at least the chance to live without my poison. Cosimo's hand twitched toward his coat. He did not get there. The 11 sleepers and the 10 old soldiers and the new Bellandi guard fired at the same time. Briefly, cleanly, Cosimo did not feel anything for very long. After, when the bodies had been moved, when the silent men in silent suits had cleaned the things that needed cleaning, when the sun was somewhere over the lake getting ready to come up. Carmela sat on a metal folding chair in the empty garage, Don Calogero sat on another one, across from her, 3 feet away. 2 old chairs in a concrete cathedral. Donatella stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder. Light, steady Nunzio stood by the wall, watching, quiet, the way he had been watching her for 6 months in a corner booth. The old man reached into his coat, slow, so nobody would startle. He took out a small black velvet bag, the kind of bag old men kept things in when those things mattered. He set it on the concrete between them. Carmela looked at it. "I do not want anything from you," she said, in the dialect. "I know," he said. "Take it anyway." She did not move. He nudged the baguette toward her with one thick finger. "In there," he said, "is a ring. I bought it in 1979. I bought it to give your grandmother. She never let me close enough to offer it. I have carried it in a drawer. For 47 years, a pause, I will not be needing it anymore." Carmela's eyes filled. She did not let them spill. She picked up the bag. She did not open it. She held it in her broad, soft hand, and she could feel through the velvet the small, hard shape of a thing that had been waiting longer than she had been alive. "You will go home," she said. "Yes. To Palermo, yes. And you will not come back to America. No. And you will tell your men there, the ones still loyal, that the war is done, that the rocks are at peace, that the Bellandis and the Vellas are one house now." Under my husband and me, Don Calogero's eyes did flicker, just barely. Not at the word husband. At the word husband, exactly. The old wolf nodded. "It will be told," he said, "and it will be kept." He stood slowly. Heavily he looked at his son. He did not say, "I love you." He did not say, "I am sorry." He did not say, "Be good." He did not say, "Take care of her." He did not say any of the things modern fathers say to modern sons. He was not a modern father. He had not been a father at all. Most of his life, he had been a wolf wearing a father's coat. He nodded once, that was all, and Nunzio, from across the garage, nodded once back. 2 men, a father and a son, on opposite sides of a concrete room, speaking with a nod the only language they had left between them, and 40 years of bad blood, and 1 mountain girl's no, and 1 boy buried under a shovel, and 3 warehouses on fire, and the slow emptying of a stretch of high villages outside Palermo, and 1 printing press son with his father's eyes, and 1 large young woman with her grandmother's voice. All of it was set down. Right there, on a concrete floor under a flickering fluorescent light at almost 5 o'clock in the morning, Calogero walked out. The door closed behind him. Carmela exhaled. Her knees, after holding her up for 11 straight hours, finally gave. She did not hit the floor. Nunzio caught her. He scooped her up, all of her. He did not strain. He did not hesitate. He carried her the way a man carries a thing he knows is his, and intends to keep being his for the rest of his life. He buried his face in her hair. "You did it," he whispered. She said no. "Carmela, you walked in there a waitress. You walked out something else." A laugh broke out of her. Watery, small, real. The first laugh she had made in 12 hours. "I am not on the Saturday shift," she said. He pulled back, just enough to look at her. "No," he said. "Tomorrow we buy the restaurant Nunzio. And we change the name to what?" He smiled. A real smile. A smile she had never seen on his face before. Not in 6 months of Tuesdays. Not in 6 months of espresso and small touches and small looks. A smile that was not careful and not measured. A smile that was just. A smile to something the rocks would remember. He said. He kissed her. Right there, in the concrete garage, with the morning light just starting to grey the ramp behind them, with Donatella turning carefully away to give them a small piece of privacy, with the loyal men quietly leaving the room. She tasted smoke and danger, and the absolute devotion of a man who had been waiting 6 months to do exactly this. There is a moment after a night like that, a moment most people do not get to have, because most people who walk into rooms full of armed men do not walk out, and the ones who do walk out do not get to sit down afterward in a quiet kitchen with the sun coming up, and eat eggs and feel safe. Carmela got to. The penthouse kitchen was small, surprising for the size of the rest of the place. White tile, a window facing east, the sky outside doing its slow turn from black to indigo, to that strange clean grey that only happens in the last moments before a Chicago dawn. Donatella was at the stove. Donatella had taken the stove the way certain old women take without asking, without ceremony, without permission. Because in her mind, all kitchens had always belonged to her, and she had simply been waiting to be reunited with each one. Eggs were cracking into a pan. Garlic was in olive oil, a clove, 2, 3, smashed flat, with the side of a knife the way Nonna Assunta had smashed them flat. The kitchen smelled like Taylor Street. The kitchen smelled like Nonna Assunta. Carmela was sitting at the counter on a stool with her shoes off. Her feet were on the cold tile floor. Her feet had never been so happy. There were dark crescents of mascara under her eyes. The black uniform shirt had 2 new stains. Her hair had given up entirely on its tie. She looked like a woman who had walked through a fire and out the other side, which was, more or less, accurate. She was holding a small black velvet bag. She had not opened it yet. She was looking at it. She was thinking about a girl in 1978, standing on a mountain, looking at the sea, waiting for a fisherman who would never come home. Nunzio came in. He had taken off the suit jacket. The white shirt underneath was rolled to the elbows, a streak of something dark across the chest she did not want to ask about. He had washed his hands. She could smell the soap, something expensive, something cedar. He stopped at the doorway. He looked at her at the counter. He looked at her for one long second, the way a man looks at a thing he is suddenly afraid to have. Hi. He said, hi. That was all. For a few breaths, then he came over, slow, sat on the stool next to her. He did not crowd her. He did not touch her. He did not have to. You can open it. He said, I know. But you do not have to, I know. A pause. I do not know what to do with it. She said, the ring, yes. He thought about that. A long thought. The kind of thought a man takes a breath in the middle of. Then he said very softly, do you want me to take it? She looked at him. What do you mean? I mean, he said, slow, carefully, if you want. We can take it down to the lake, you and me, this morning, right now, and you can throw it in, and it can be done. The old man can have his apology, and it can sit at the bottom of the water. And never come up again. Carmela's mouth opened. Closed. I had not thought of that. She said you did not have to. I am thinking it for you. She felt something in her chest, a small warm thing, the size of a sparrow, beating. What if? She said, what if I want to keep it? His face did not move. Then keep it. He said, but not because I know, not because of anything but the keeping. I know, yes, yes. He said. She set the bag on the counter. She did not open it, not yet. Maybe not for a long time, maybe never. But she set it down. The way you set down a thing you have decided is going to belong to you on your terms. Or not at all. Donatella turned from the stove with a plate. Eat, the old woman said. In the dialect, I am not hungry. Carmela said, you are. Donatella said, your body just does not know yet. She put the plate in front of Carmela. Eggs. Bright yellow, soft, garlic crisped brown around the edges, a piece of bread fried in the same oil. Salt scattered the way only old women scatter salt. Pepper from a small wooden mill that had been packed in Donatella's leather bag, apparently, the whole time. A small wedge of lemon on the side of the plate, bright as a coin. Carmela picked up the fork. Her hand was steady. She had not expected it to be. She took one bite. She started to cry. Just a little, just enough to know she was a person's. Nunzio did not move, did not reach for her, did not try to fix it. He just sat next to her at the counter, his shoulder almost touching hers, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. A man who knew the difference between holding and crowding. A man who, somehow, had walked into a restaurant on a wet Tuesday in April 6 months ago to meet a contractor. and had stayed because a heavy girl had brought him a glass of water, Donatella turned back to the stove, cracked 2 more eggs, did not look. Outside, the indigo became grey. Outside, the grey became the first pale hint of pink along the lake. Outside, Chicago started waking up. A garbage truck 3 streets over, a church bell. The small, steady noises of a city that did not yet know it had changed hands at 5 a.m. Carmela ate. The second bite was easier, the third easier still. By the 5th she was hungry. A real hunger. The kind of hunger she had not let herself feel since she was a child. Because somewhere along the way, somebody had taught her that women shaped like her were not allowed to be hungry in public, were not allowed to want food the way other people wanted food. She wanted this food. The yolk. The bread. The little wedge of lemon at the end, sucked clean. Donatella, at the stove, was smiling. Carmela could not see it exactly. The old woman had her back turned, but she could feel it. The way you could feel sun coming through a window without looking at the window. "You are," Carmela said, to Nunzio, "going to have to feed me. The rest of my life." He turned on his stool. He looked at her. His face did a small thing she would think about. Later, for years. "I have been waiting 6 months," he said. "For you to say something like that." She put her fork down. She put her hand, soft and heavy and warm, on top of his hand on the counter. 6 months. She said 6 months. He said Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays and Thursdays, the contractor. I do not even remember what he was building. Carmela. She laughed. He laughed. It was small. It was tired. It was almost a sob on both sides, but it was a laugh. And Donatella, at the stove, started to hum. The old woman started to hum. A song with no words, the same song Nonna Assunta used to hum. Hands deep in flour. On Sunday afternoons in a small apartment over a butcher shop on Taylor Street. A song from the mountains. A song from before. A song the rocks remembered. Carmela closed her eyes. She let it land on her. She let her grandmother into the room one last time. Through Donatella's voice. Through the sound of garlic in oil. Through the warm, steady weight of a man's hand under hers when she opened her eyes again. The first true light of the morning was coming in through the east-facing window, and the night was over. The night was over. She had walked out of it. 6 months later, there is a restaurant on the Gold Coast. The curtains are not drawn. The windows are clear. You can see in from the street the way you can see into any other restaurant on Rush Street. The name on the door has changed. It is one word, in a script so old most people who walk past do not recognize the letters LED or OCC. The Rocks. Inside, on most nights, you can see a woman walking the floor. Sized 22, give or take. Hair pulled back in a low bun, the color of dark coffee. A simple black dress, well-tailored, that does not hide her hips. A smile that lands on every table the way a hand lands on a shoulder. She knows every regular by name. She remembers what their wives drink. She remembers which one is recovering from a hip surgery. Which one lost her husband last winter? Which one has a daughter starting college in the fall and is too proud to say she is afraid? She is, if you ask anybody in the neighborhood, the best host in this part of the city. She owns the place. She does not say that. People figure it out. If you sit in the corner booth on a Tuesday or a Thursday, you will see a tall man come in, charcoal suit, jaw like a movie, eyes that go soft when they find her in the room. He kisses her once, on the temple, like a small private promise, and sits where she puts him. He always orders the same thing, espresso, veal, a small glass of Barolo. Even though he barely touches the wine, because that is the wine she likes. And ordering it is a way of having her at his table even when she is across the room. If you watch her bring him the espresso, you might catch his hand touching hers when she sets it down. Just a second, long enough to mean something, short enough to mean everything. She has a ring on her left hand. A small one, not the one in the velvet bag. The velvet bag stayed on a high shelf in her closet for 2 months. Then she brought it down, brought it to a man in Palermo through the mail. With a small note, the note said, "In the dialect, this is yours. Not mine, but thank you." For the keeping of it, the old man had written back 4 words, "Thank you, my daughter." The ring on her hand now was bought new by Nunzio at a small jeweler on Clark Street on a Saturday morning in late May, after she had told him in plain English over coffee and a bagel that she would marry him if he asked, and she would not marry him if he ordered. So he had asked. He had asked on his knees, on the sidewalk, in front of a hardware store. With pigeons walking around them, she had said yes. She had said yes the way a large young woman says yes when she has finally been seen by the only person whose seeing she ever wanted. In the kitchen of Le Roche, on most nights there is a small old woman in a black dress. She does not cook anymore. She is 69. She sits on a stool by the pass and tastes things, and tells the chefs in the dialect of the rocks when the salt is wrong. The chefs do not speak the dialect. They have learned to read her face. When her face goes still, more salt. When her face goes soft, perfect. When her face does a small thing at the corner of the mouth that you would not see if you were not watching. The dish is ready to leave the kitchen. She is the spine of the place. Her name is Donatella. She is teaching Carmela everything: how to taste, how to fix, how to hold a kitchen together with nothing but a pair of eyes and a pinch of salt, how to be a woman who runs a room without raising her voice, how to be a Donna, which, Donatella has explained only a few hundred times now, is not a queen. It is just a woman who has decided to take her own life seriously. Out front, in the dining room, the staff is mixed. Some of the new Bellandi guard, in capacities that have nothing to do with food. Some of the old Vella sleepers, finally allowed to come up for air. A young driver named Marcello, promoted to floor manager, who is much better at it than anyone expected. Who knows the wine list cold. Who has not raised his voice at a server once in 6 months. Who has, very quietly, started dating one of the line cooks. An older man named Saverio Greco comes in 3 nights a week, small white scar under his suit jacket, sits at the bar, orders the veal. Never lets anyone but Carmela serve him. He calls her Donna, quickly. Only when he thinks no one else is listening. She has stopped correcting him some nights when the dining room is full, and the warm, low light is bouncing off the bottles behind the bar, and the kitchen is humming, and her husband is at the corner booth with his glass of Barolo. Carmela steps to the front of the restaurant. She stands at the host stand. She looks out the window at Rush Street, and in the glass, in her reflection. She does not see a waitress. She does not see a queen either. The word still sits strange on her. She has never gotten used to Donna. She is not sure she will. She sees a large young woman who takes up exactly as much space as she takes up, and no longer apologizes for it, and no longer makes herself small in doorways, and no longer wonders, when she walks into rooms, if there will be a chair that fits her. She has to the chairs at Le Broquet custom-made. They fit her. They fit everybody. That is on purpose. Older women come in. Often. Women her grandmother's age. Some of them widows. Some of them grandmothers. Some of them with husbands they have grown tired of. Some with husbands they would walk through fire for again. They sit in the wide, soft chairs. They eat the eggs Donatella has taught the breakfast cook to make. They have a glass of wine in the middle of the afternoon if they want one. They linger. Nobody hurries them. Nobody glances at the door, waiting for them to leave. Carmela has trained the staff. Specifically, about this, if a woman over 60 sits down, she said in the small back office. To her assembled staff. On opening day, she is the most important person in this dining room. You will look her in the eye. You will remember her name. You will not, under any circumstances, make her feel that her body is taking up too much room. The staff had nodded. The staff had understood because Carmela had spent her whole life looking. At the women like Nonna Assunta, the large, soft Italian grandmothers in their black dresses and their grey buns, sitting at red-checkered tables, being not quite seen by waiters who were already on to the next thing, watching the world go past them, smiling small smiles. Holding their handbags in their laps, she had decided, in her own restaurant, it would not be like that. In her own restaurant, they would be seen. They would be served first. They would be served best. They would be remembered, and somewhere far from Chicago, in a small house in the hills outside Palermo, an old man sits in a wicker chair on a stone porch. He watches the sea. He does not speak much. He has on a chain around his neck the small black velvet bag he carried for 47 years. The bag came back to him by way of a daughter he had not known he was allowed to have. He carries it now the way a man carries a confession that has been answered. He has not killed anyone in 6 months. He thinks, some afternoons, watching the white sails on the blue water, about a girl on a kitchen floor in Sicily in 1976. A girl with a wooden spoon and a glare. A girl who had not loved him. A girl who had built her own kingdom. He thinks about her granddaughter, walking the floor of a restaurant in Chicago, in a dress that does not hide her hips, smiling at strangers being seen. He thinks about how much, all his life, he had mistaken fear for love, and anger for power, and rage for strength. And the woman he could not have for a door, he had the right to break down. He had been wrong about almost everything. He had spent 40 years being wrong, but he had been right about one thing. He had been right that Assunta Vella was the most beautiful thing that ever walked out of those mountains, and he had lived just long enough to see her granddaughter prove him right by being beautiful in a way he had never been able to recognize when he was a young wolf. The kind of beautiful that does not need anyone to confirm it, the kind of beautiful that just is and lasts and feeds people and makes a room safer for the next woman who walks into it. In the kitchen of Le Roc, on a Tuesday in late October, the breakfast is over. Lunch is hours away. The light is sliding across the white tile in long, warm bars. Carmela is sitting on a stool at the pass with a cup of coffee and a small white plate. The plate has one piece of bread on it, fried in olive oil, salted the way only old women salt things. Donatella is across from her. They are not talking. They are just sitting, the way two women who love each other can sit. In a quiet kitchen, in a city that has finally stopped trying to kill either of them. With the morning light coming in through a clean window, after a while, Carmela says, in the dialect, "What was she like?" Donatella does not ask who. Donatella looks at the ceiling, looks for the answer, the way old women look for things they have put down somewhere and are not sure where. She was difficult, Donatella says. She was beautiful. She was strong. She was sometimes cruel. She was always kind to the people she had decided to be kind to. She did not bend. She did not break. She did not apologize for taking up space in a doorway. She walked into rooms and the rooms changed around her. A pause. She would have loved you, Donatella says. Beyond anything, Carmela closes her eyes. She does not cry. She is past crying about this, or before it, or somewhere else with it. She just lets the words land. She would have loved this restaurant. Donatella says yes. Carmela says she would have hated the lighting. Carmela laughs. She would have. She agrees. She would have stood at that pass, Donatella says, and told the chef the eggs were wrong. And the chef would have agreed, because she would have been right. Yes, a long pause. You are going to be a wonderful grandmother, Donatella says, softly. In the dialect, Carmelita opens her eyes. I know. We have not even I know. I am 69. I am allowed to know things before they happen. It is one of the only good things about being old. Carmela laughs. Wet, real. She reaches across the pass. She takes the old woman's hand. The hand is small, papery, strong as wire. Thank you, she says. In the dialect. For what? For not letting us be ghosts, Donatella's bright eyes fill. She does not let them spill either. That, it turns out, is a Vella thing. Outside on Rush Street, the late October light is doing something gentle to the brick. A woman in a green coat walks past the window, stops, looks in, reads the name on the door. Le Roc, the Rocks. She does not know the language. She does not need to. Something in the warm, low light of the dining room pulls her toward it, the way warm rooms pull cold people. She comes in. She is 63 years old. She is alone. She has been alone for a year and a half, since her husband died of a stroke at the kitchen sink while drying a coffee cup. She has not gone out to eat by herself once. Today she has decided to. The host stand is empty. She stands in the doorway, uncertain, already deciding to leave, already deciding it was a mistake. At her age, by herself, Carmela comes out of the kitchen. Carmela sees her. Carmela sees everything she needs to see in the first second. The way a woman sees another woman who has been told, in 1,000 small ways, that her time for being a person is over. Carmela walks over. She smiles. It is not a host smile. It is a real one. She picks up a menu. Right this way. Carmela says, "We have your table ready." "We do." The woman says, "And are certain we do." Carmela says. And she leads the woman in the green coat to a wide, soft chair by the window, in the best light in the room, with a view of the street, and a small bud vase with one yellow flower that Donatella had cut from the planter out back that morning, for exactly this, for somebody, for whoever needed it, for the next woman who walked in alone. The woman in the green coat sits down. The chair fits her. She does not have to apologize for taking it up. Carmela hands her a menu. "Take your," Carmela says. "Stay as long as you like." The woman looks up. Her eyes do a small thing, "Thank you." She says, "Kie." Carmela puts a hand, soft, brief, warm, on the woman's shoulder. "You are welcome here," she says. Then she walks away, back into her kitchen, back to her grandmother's friend, back to her own life, which is now, finally, exactly her own size. And in the doorway of the kitchen, before she goes in, Carmela turns her head, just for a second, just to look back at the dining room, the light, the wood, the wide, soft chairs, the woman in the green coat, already pretending to read the menu, already lifting her chin a little, already being a person again. And somewhere, on a stone porch in the hills above Palermo, an old man lifts his glass, to no one, to the rocks, he says, quietly, to the rocks. He says again, the sea does not answer. It does not need to. The rocks remember. They always did. And they are not, it turns out, anywhere far away. They are right here, in a city by a lake, in a kitchen with a clean white window, in a room full of wide, soft chairs, in a woman who has finally stopped making herself smaller, in every doorway she walks through, with her chin up, and her breath even, and her grandmother's voice steady in her chest, the rocks, as Nonna Assunta used to say, with flour on her hands, and a wooden spoon on the counter beside her, and a Sunday afternoon stretching out long and warm and slow. The rocks do not let the wolves bite. We bite first, and then, if we are very lucky, if we are very brave, if we have an old woman in a black shawl who taught us the words, if we have a man who walked into our section on a wet Tuesday to meet a contractor he no longer remembers, if we have lived through the night that was supposed to kill us, then, maybe then, we get to put down the wooden spoon and pick up the bread and feed whoever walks in.